Story 1. My best friend took his own life. I grew up with him and his older brother, having known him since he was a toddler. I am now 40 years old, and this loss has affected me deeply. I have been doing my best to stay strong for my newborn while navigating the challenges of being a first-time mother. It has been a significant challenge. I lost my mom when I was 15, and while that was incredibly difficult, it was so long ago that I no longer feel the same grief and sadness. I wish she were still here to enjoy all of her grandkids. Story 2. I had a stroke at 42 that left me blind in my right eye. It caused a significant loss of independence as I can no longer drive. I used to be an avid reader, but I haven't read a book since the stroke. Now, I get headaches from trying to track pages and longer text. Story 3. Paying off my father's gambling debt has led to me becoming homeless and losing my childhood home, despite having already paid some of it off. Story 4. My cat is dying. I had childhood pets that passed away, but this one feels different. We adopted him in college, and he was with us through many significant life transitions. It is truly devastating to say goodbye. Story 5. I lost my dad last May. I was in the room with him. He sat up in his bed and stared at me. He gasped twice for air that he couldn't take and fell back into bed. I'm just glad I was the last person he saw. Hopefully, that gave him a little comfort. However, the look on his face is now imprinted on my mind, and I can't shake it. Story 6. I dated someone who turned out to be married, and I faced the consequences even though I didn't know and ended the relationship immediately. She made my life difficult while seemingly enjoying life with him. Story 7. Having an unknown chronic ailment, the medication trials, the specialists, the desperate therapies, and the lifestyle changes only to still experience pain every day. I dislike being on medication. Withdrawal will be difficult. I have spent so much money on treatment. I need relief. Story 8. I found out that my son, when he was 8 years old, had a massive brain tumor. 5 years later, he is doing fine. It was one of the scariest moments of my wife's and my lives. Story 9. Psychosis from alcohol use, divorce, and losing all my money while trying to gain financial security on my own have been challenging experiences. I am starting over from scratch while in debt. However, I am living independently and single, which gives me control over my life. I am almost 40 and feel like a major failure, but I am doing my best to have faith in the process that can help us improve and level up. Story 10. After a long-term relationship of 13 years, I was told on a random Thursday that he doesn't love me anymore and hasn't for a while. Story 11. Repeated heart failure has made me aware that my life will be shorter, but not as short as I initially thought. I have engaged in some activities I probably shouldn't have and now feel anxious about going on holiday in case I have another episode, which can happen at any time. It's a constant effort to appreciate life while working hard, hoping for a future retirement, and living each day fully. On the positive side, I have become adept at expressing my love for others in ways they understand. That, along with being kind, is a significant part of what matters to me. Story 12. I cannot complain after reading some of these answers. My heart goes out to all of you. However, I would say that being in an abusive relationship is particularly challenging. The uneasiness and the need to look over your shoulder every time you come home or see a car like there's never truly goes away. Story 13. Honestly, the worst things that have ever happened to me occurred before I was a teenager. The worst thing I can think of as an adult was losing my cat of 12 years. Story 14. In 2024, I had surgery and developed a urinary tract infection that became septic. I also acquired Clostridium difficile from the antibiotics used to treat the infection and sepsis. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, but the first treatment attempted was ineffective. I felt inactive for most of 2024. Story 15. My mom took her life 4 years ago this December. I was very close to her. It angered my dad how close I was to her because they were divorced. He caused a lot of drama with my mom, damaging her to the point that she no longer found purpose in living. Story 16. I didn't know at the time I met her, but the worst experience for me was dating a textbook narcissist for 2 years. It was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. She was and still is an evil person. Story 17. I started dating a man 15 years older than I am, who ended up cheating on me for 2 years, wrecked 2 of my cars, paid no bills, went to jail, and then went to prison. I am pretty sure he used me for a place to sleep. I was a means for his survival, and he never loved me. Story 18. I lost 3 jobs that paid $90,000, and I lost my last job at a very difficult time in my life. I have not recovered from this. I had to withdraw from my 401k and make drastic lifestyle changes. I am definitely not retiring in this life. Story 19. Divorce has led me to the conclusion that I will never marry or fully trust anyone again. I was married to someone who struggled with alcoholism and had unhealthy relationships with intimacy. This experience has significantly impacted my life. Story 20. My grandmother was dying. On a Sunday, my parents went to visit her. I couldn't go because I wasn't packed, as my parents were dropping me off at my college apartment. She died that Wednesday. Story 21. Realizing that after improving so many aspects of myself and being ready to enter the dating scene after missing out in my teens and 20s, I may end up alone anyway. Story 22. Rheumatism, along with trying to live a normal life after an abusive childhood, has made it difficult for me to believe that people love me. This struggle has genuinely harmed my relationships with wonderful individuals. I am not very old. The rheumatism was an early onset condition. Story 23. I slept on the streets for almost 2 years. I still have a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma associated with those years. However, I am in a better place now, and those experiences are just distant memories that sometimes manifest as nightmares. Story 24. Finding out that the brain tumor I have isn't the cause of my strange health problems, but something else unknown is. I am still trying to figure that out. Alternatively, it could be the result of being rear-ended by a cement truck, which has led to multiple joint surgeries. Fortunately, I was able to walk away from the crash overall. Story 25. Respiratory dyskinesia lasted for 9 months, causing hours of suffocation most nights. I wanted to die. It has left me traumatized and my life completely derailed. Even after years, I have never been the same. Story 26. I have experienced significant pain and health issues, and most recently, I received a diagnosis of an incurable, fatal neurological disease. However, the worst thing I have faced was the deception and betrayal by a trusted friend. That truly devastated me. Story 27. I had an appendectomy that went wrong and nearly died. I had to undergo major open abdominal surgery and now have a hernia from that, so I need to get more surgery. I also had breast cancer last year, which was extremely terrible and traumatic. However, the surgery was the first medical issue I encountered in my life, making it a unique kind of hell. Story 28. Honestly, it's hard to choose because there has been a lot to consider, but I would have to go with ending my relationship with my former fiancé. Story 29. I always get downvoted for this, but the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm glad it helped many people, but it gave me a severe side effect reaction for 3 years before I got better. It limited my ability to work, had a massive impact on my mental health, and I couldn't even think about dating. It set me back significantly in my life and career. Story 30. Watching my mother suffer from cancer and then losing her has deeply affected my life. Reading these responses brings to light how fortunate some people are, and I feel envious. Story 31. I had to help my grandparents sell their house. While it may not sound that bad, it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life due to a complicated family backstory. I had a nervous breakdown and developed a chronic pain condition afterward. I wouldn't change that I helped them, but if I could go back, I would insist they let others assist me instead of forcing me to handle everything on my own. Story 32. I work at a supermarket. I have been a casual employee for 4 years and have never been offered part-time work. I am not sure if that is the right approach in Australia, but it certainly makes me feel undervalued as an employee. Story 33. Getting into a long-term relationship with someone who was sexually abusive and raped me multiple times, ultimately becoming the father of my child. The rapes occurred afterward, but the sexual abuse started before. I have tried to process it in therapy multiple times, and each time a therapist has said I wasn't ready to work through it. So, I guess I'm stuck with the resulting trauma forever. It's been almost a decade and a half. I'm doing okay. I have a loving, caring husband. I'm just haunted by the memory of it all, and I don't think anyone can help me overcome it. Story 34. Aside from having pets pass away and becoming very ill, I wound up in the hospital intensive care unit for most of a week last month and received a diabetes diagnosis. Story 35. My wife and I lost our baby girl at 35 weeks. It was devastating. We've learned to live, but we will never be the same. We tried again as soon as we could and were blessed with a now almost 7-year-old little boy. He was born at 25 weeks and spent 146 days in the neonatal intensive care unit. He just started his 3rd year of T-ball. He's our rainbow baby. Story 36. Either getting hit by a car or finding out I was being cheated on after my uncle and grandfather passed away. Story 37. Losing both parents and 2 stepsisters 6 months apart in 2022 and 2023. Getting hit while stopped at a stop sign in July 2024. My father's lender suing me in August 2024. And then someone without insurance hitting me and totaling my car in February 2025. The job loss, divorce, and loss of a pet were minor compared to these experiences. Story 38. Definitely losing loved ones is difficult. I lost my mother and brother a few years ago, and that pain still feels fresh today. Story 39. Health problems can be challenging, and it can be frustrating to find a doctor who is willing to do more than just a basic blood panel to determine what is happening. Story 40. After experiencing a dozen seizures in a row, I went into a coma as a result. My job was able to fire me, cutting my hours from 55 a week to 5, labeling me a liability. Consequently, I fell behind on rent and got evicted. The same job and manager refused to sign a document stating that I no longer worked for them, preventing me from collecting welfare for all 3 of my children. I continue to have seizures, but I have since found a new and better job. It is more physical, and I transitioned from working at a Family Dollar store to doing concrete construction. It is what it is. Story 41. Woke up one day 5 years ago, suddenly disabled at 23, and life as I knew it was pulled from under me. Inexplicable grief. Story 42. I had 2 best friends from separate groups, and they didn't know each other. One died unexpectedly, and within a couple of months, the other ghosted me out of the blue after 13 years of friendship. I truly don't know why. When I say ghosted, I mean 0 replies. I haven't seen or heard from them. I know nothing happened to them because I checked their social media, and they had been active. I left them alone, though, because I had already reached out numerous times. They were the only person I still talk to from school. I haven't been the same since, and the people in my life don't even notice because they're all new people in my family. I hadn't been around my family much for years until relatively recently. I feel like I don't even know myself, and no one knows me. I haven't articulated this before. This was unexpected. Story 43. Epilepsy has become serious. I had to quit school and my job. I lost my girlfriend and had to move in with my parents. I have frequently woken up in the hospital. I have medical bills that are overwhelming. It seems I am now disabled and cannot drive or do much of anything. I have been trying to get the right medication for a year and a half. I am supposed to receive disability benefits, but I have been informed that it may not help. Even if it does, they might take it away. However, it has been almost 3 months without a seizure. Story 44. Well, after 1.5 years of being an adult, my mother passed away in my hands due to cancer. I carried her chest to the grave last week. Story 45. Getting punched in the temple with a bare knuckle and getting dropped could have killed me, but I survived. Story 46. I lost my dad 30 years ago, and I have never fully recovered. My poor life choices led to my incarceration. Story 47. I have been hit by a train in my vehicle, experienced anaphylaxis over 90 times in 7 years, and undergone brain surgery. Story 48. I lost my mom at 24 when I was barely an adult, and my brother was only 17. Then I lost my dad at 32. So nothing much compares after that. Story 49, psychosis and post-psychotic depression, which may be worse than psychosis, along with homelessness, kidney disease, unemployment, heartbreak, and being sedated for a year due to a misdiagnosis of bipolar disorder, have all contributed to doubling my body weight. Losing my grandmother is another significant loss. These experiences have created a challenging journey for me. Story 50. I received a call from my brother saying he couldn't reach our father on Christmas Day a decade ago. I always feared I would walk in and find our dad dead, picturing him sitting in his recliner. Instead, my sister and I discovered him after he had attempted to return to his apartment after answering the door. He likely suffered either a heart attack or stroke, causing him to lean and fall over the banister, just a few feet away, landing in front of my apartment. He was lying in a pool of blood and he was deceased. He must have been there for about 5 hours before we found him. That image remained etched in my mind for a long time. Story 51. Needing a break from the burnout of life, like work, children, and family, can be overwhelming. When you finally have everything lined up for a relaxing vacation, you may find yourself feeling guilty for enjoying it. As a result, you might look forward to returning to the familiar stress of daily life. Story 52. I experienced homelessness as a child. Recently, I faced the risk of becoming homeless again. It was the most frightened I have ever felt. Story 53. I experienced a severe break-in at my home after relocating to Colorado. My neighbors, along with another individual, drugged my wife and me with a substance during dinner. They assaulted me brutally, and I repressed the memories until last year, despite people mentioning it over time. During the hours-long attack, I was beaten by more than a dozen adults and their children while my wife was sexually assaulted. They streamed this horrific event online, although I never discovered any footage. They used my handgun to strike my head, causing the right side of my face to become numb for a year. They falsely executed me with that weapon, pulled on my limbs to injure every joint, stripped me, and coerced me into making false statements. They framed me even though the internet service provider knew it was not a legitimate device in our home. They contaminated my water supply and shower head and did much more. The attack lasted approximately 6 hours. I was knocked unconscious multiple times until I began experiencing seizures. At that point, they choked me until I lost consciousness. I called the police, who arrived without an ambulance in a single patrol car with one officer and another individual in civilian clothing. They showed little interest in checking on my wife and instructed me to get into the back of the squad car to be taken to the hospital. I recognized that the police were not acting appropriately and that I was in danger when I showed them the bloody handgun, and they carelessly touched it, leaving fingerprints. I have never received any closure from this experience, and I feel a deep disgust towards humanity. Story 54. Sexual assault and losing my mother to addiction is deeply painful. She is still alive but emotionally distant, and I have had to go no contact. Mourning for a relationship that will never happen with someone who is still technically alive but refuses to get better, despite your love, is incredibly confusing for your soul. Both of these experiences are traumatic and even somewhat embarrassing, yet society expects silence on these matters. As an adult, you feel pressured to present a happy facade while silently carrying the weight of these struggles for the rest of your life. Story 55. I'm only 24 and have already accumulated around $80,000 of debt, and in 2 years it will be over $500,000. This is definitely the worst thing that has happened so far. Story 56. Becoming disabled, leaving my career just a few years after it started, and adjusting to life as a wheelchair user feels like a 3-in-1 experience. Story 57. The early stages of my mother's descent into dementia were challenging. She experienced delusions and anger. This situation continued for years and has only eased as her condition has progressed and become more apparent. While it is not much of a consolation, it is still better than dealing with an erratic, paranoid version of the woman who raised me. Story 58. The lifelong effects of childhood abuse, physical and verbal or emotional, have led to feelings of self-hatred for my inability to move on. I struggle not to repeat the cycle with my own children. Living with autism, having a child with autism, and no longer maintaining a relationship with my birth family have all taken a toll. Additionally, I face depression, low self-esteem, and estrangement from my in-law family for various reasons, while still needing to see them often. Chronic insomnia and concealing my struggles from those around me have compounded my feelings of shame, especially when I share my experiences online. I am grateful that I have not lost a loved one, aside from some very special pets over the years. However, I worry about the medical issues that may come with age. My strong faith continues to support me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.